Okay, let's get underway. Right, property. Theft. Sorry, I can't make it more exciting, but it is a surprisingly complex offence, and grappling with how the actus reus and mens rea requirements work in the context of the modern world is tricky, I know, but what you need to remember is making sure you have a really good understanding of what each of the actus reus and mens rea requirements are, and then just thinking about, do the facts meet the requirements of each of those actus reus and mens rea requirements? Right, so take your ideas about what is right and wrong, and your ideas about theft and stealing and whether justice and all of those things out of the picture, and just think, what is the law? Do the facts meet the legal requirements? Right, and that will hopefully make it easier for you. And yes, you do have to meet all of the actus reus and all of the mens rea requirements for the offence to be satisfied. Don't despair though, because just because you can't prove theft doesn't mean that there's not necessarily another offence that will apply. It just means that theft can't be proven, right? So what I want to do before we get underway is just put on the board what the actus reus and mens rea requirements are, so you're very clear about it. Now, I'm hoping that at the very least we can get the basic actus reus and mens rea requirements based on your memory as opposed to looking at your notes. No pressure, but at least one of the classes has managed to do this without looking at their notes at all, well, seemingly, unless they cheated and I didn't notice. So can you remember what your actus reus requirements are? What do you have to search first? Yes, front.
It must be property.
Good. You've got to have property. Okay, what else? Yeah. Can't steal from yourself. Okay, so that's fairly common sense. What else? Yep. Good. Okay, so there probably has to be, you've got to take or use or deal. Remember, they are separate. Two different limbs of liability.
Consent.
Yeah. So it's got to be without consent. Excellent. Right, mens rea.
It has to be done dishonestly.
It's got to be done dishonestly. Yep. What else? Intentionally. If you, like in my situation, leave the supermarket and find that you've got a Kinder in your handbag that you didn't know about. Haven't done it intentionally, certainly haven't done it dishonestly. What else?
Without claim
Without claim of
of right.
right. And finally, it's back.
With the intent to deprive the owner permanently of that.
Okay, great. Right. Here's one I prepared earlier. I'll put your actus reus on this board in a minute. Okay. Remember that when you're looking at dishonest, you're thinking about, has the person acted without the belief that they didn't have consent or authorisation of the person able to give it? And when you're looking at claim of right, you're thinking, has the person acted without the belief that they didn't have a proprietary or possessory right to the property? Okay, you can have a mistaken belief. Right. It doesn't have to be reasonable, but it does have to be genuine. Obviously, the more unreasonable it is, the less likely you are to be believed. But that's a credibility issue. So these are subjective requirements. When you're looking at intention to permanently deprive, now we haven't covered that yet in the lecture, but intention to permanently deprive also includes dealing with the property in such a way that it can't be returned in the same condition. Okay, so that's like your Sabritsky case where she had the pram, she allowed her child to play with it, and so therefore it couldn't be returned in the same condition, so that was enough to be an intention to permanently deprive. So what I want you to do now is work your way through the fact pattern. Remember, when you are thinking about property, you should also identify, am I looking at a fungible? If you're looking at a fungible, it's an interchangeable unit. What that means is that when you give someone possession, ownership travels with the possession. Okay, but only if you give possession with consent. If the person takes possession but there's no consent, they don't get ownership. Okay. Now, one thing I realised after the lecture on Tuesday that I probably didn't emphasise well enough. So remember, I talked about the value of the property doesn't matter. When it comes to money, even though it's currency and that makes it a fungible, when we're thinking about the property, it's really just about the pieces of paper. Okay, we're not thinking about the value of the money. So when we're thinking about having given someone too much money, we're not thinking about value, we're thinking about the paper. Okay? So we're not concerned with value, we're concerned with items. Okay, go to it. Let's see how you get on. I'm going to give you about 12 minutes and then we'll unpack it as a class to make sure that you're all on track before we move on to the next fact pattern. Feel free to ask questions as you go. Off you go. Such enthusiasm and excitement. need a bit more time? I've got some people saying desperately, yes, please. Just 2 more minutes. Phil, if you've done, move on to the next one. Okay, let's see how you got on. Right, have we got property? Yes. What is the property? The scotch and the money. Okay. So, is it owned or possessed by someone else? Yes, by Kylie. It's pretty easy. Has it been taken? Right? Has it been taken without consent? Are you sure? Right at the back. So, right. Yep. Right. Yep.
Consent must be freely given, and consent actually you have to say afterwards. Can't really be said to be freely given.
Okay. So but is there consent for her to come in and take it from Kylie? She's given her keys.
There's consent for her to come into someone's house, but I think that would come with expectations that there's some parts of the house that we shouldn't.
Okay. Did you have a different view?
There could be potential for argument that because they're best friends and there's like this sort of like if you had your best friend, you'd be okay with them borrowing a few things. Could be an argument, but we don't have enough context.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, why else would she give her the key unless she needed to go into the house and she wasn't there for a reason? It just seems that there's a bit of consent there.
Yeah. So we haven't really got quite enough facts. This is really confusing students. Yep.
I think it's unclear on the facts, but at least from what we have here, there's no like active like explanation to like other than saying best friend. There's no active like saying, oh, I give consent. So I think on that alone, I think it like still it matches that requirement there. But maybe if there was more facts and then a broad fact pattern, maybe you could say something else and it would be more true. But like from what I have here, I think obviously like there's just no consent.
Okay. So, yeah, I think you probably haven't got quite enough facts. The fact that she's got keys, but there's a distinction between, so in trying to sort of help students with this, so an example, one of my sons had a friend through high school that eventually lived at our house. He knew where the key was, he knew the combination to get into various parts of the house. He wrote stuff on the board when we did the shopping, he helped himself to what was in the fridge and the cupboard. And he had all his own bedding and bed and yada yada yada, right? It was like having a third son. And he, I would come home on occasion, and he would have bunked off school or wagged, as you call it up here, and he would be standing in my fridge. So right, that would be implied consent because of the way that he lived in our house. I have a key to my neighbour's house, so that in emergencies I can get into their house. Now, there's no implied consent that I could go into their house and help myself to anything in their house, right? There's a very big difference between those two scenarios. Okay, so I don't think we've got quite enough facts. I think it would be reasonable to say I don't think there's enough to say that there was consent given, but you could also say there's not enough facts to say beyond reasonable doubt that it was without consent. Okay, so either way. So let's come to our mens rea. Is there an intention for her to take it? Clearly. Has she done it dishonestly in that she has acted without a belief that she has consent or authority to do so, either implied or otherwise? Do you think that she thinks she's got implied or believes she's got implied consent?
I don't know if we really have enough other facts to determine that, but one factor would be that she, I mean, did it, which seems to indicate that she thought it would be okay, but she also seems to also indicate that she knows it's somewhat wrong and that she writes a note saying that I owe you the things that she took, which could indicate that she knew she didn't have permission and that she has to repay the debt, but it also could just be
But you can have consent to take something and return it.
yeah, it could just be that.
Yeah,
But it could be like, we don't really have enough.
yeah, yeah. But what about if her evidence was, I didn't really know, but I knew that if I asked her that she would say yes. Is that dishonest? Can she say that she acted? Oh,
It is because it's a legal standard rather than a moral standard. So it doesn't matter what she thought might happen, it's whether or not she legally had authorization to take it.
yeah, well done. And that's the distinction now between fraudulently and dishonestly. Okay, so previously it would have been enough for her to say, look, I knew that if I'd asked, I would have got consent. So I knew morally I was on good grounds. So I'm not acting dishonestly, I'm not acting fraudulently, which was the old words. Now it's more about legal authorization, legal consent, implied or otherwise. If she knows she doesn't have consent but thinks, well, if I did ask, I'd get it, she knows at the time that she takes it that she hasn't actually got consent. It's a very grey area, but it definitely shows a tightening up of the law. Right, so that's your fairly case was, you know, the old fraudulently scenario, the 40p out of the till. Nowadays we would treat that as dishonest because the person doing it knew that they didn't actually have consent. What about acting without claim of right? Does she know, does she have a belief that she has a proprietary right or a right to possession? No, there's nothing to suggest that she thinks she has any proprietary right or possessory right in the scotch or the money. What about the intention to permanently deprive? She's done an IOU, she's going to replace it. Yep.
It doesn't work because fungible is a replacement different units, not the original.
Sorry, the fungibles are interchangeable, so
They're replaced by different units, not the original trade.
yeah, she's not replacing it with the same thing. And because if she hasn't got it with consent, if she hasn't taken possession with consent, then she hasn't got ownership. Right, so the fact that she is talking about replacing it with something else, she's forcing a substitution. Okay, so there is an intention to permanently deprive of the actual property she's taken. Okay, that doesn't change even though it's a fungible. Okay, it's a forced substitution. If she had got consent, that would be different. Everyone get that? Okay. Next one, money. See how you get on with this? So our scenario is that she's obviously gone and bought chocolate for $2. The person thinks she's handed over $20. In fact, she's only handed over 10. So they end up giving her too much change and then end up giving her, instead of one $5 note, they end up giving her two. So work your way through that and see whether or not you think you've got theft. Let's see if you can get that done. Do you think you can get that done in about 8 minutes? So we've got time to debrief it. I can see some really excited, firm nods. Yes, Lucy, absolutely we can do it in that time. Sorry, am I in your way? you got on. Right. So, in effect, hopefully you've all worked out that what's happened is that he's given her $15 too much. Right, so there's the $10 too much because he thinks he's received $20, and then there's the extra $5 on top of the $5 that he intended to give her because there's two $5 notes attached to each other. What is the property? The money. Okay, so we've got property. Sometimes you'll have a look at it and go, is it property? Not everything falls into the, the definition of property. All right, so don't just assume I've got property. It won't always fall into the definition. Your property is your money. Is it owned or possessed by someone else? Yes, obviously the dairy owner. Has it been taken? Yep. Is it taken with consent or without consent?
There was consent unless that consent is vitiated by a mistake.
Good, okay. So obviously, he deliberately gave her that money. It wasn't as if she snatched it out of his hand. Okay, so it was a deliberate handing over. So it's consented unless you can vitiate that consent by a mistake. How do you decide whether or not a mistake vitiates consent? What's your law? Australian case? Illich, yep. So you've got 3 mistakes that will vitiate consent. What are they? Mistake as to? Yeah, mistake as to the identity, the person you're giving it to. Does that apply here? Nope. Mistake, what's your second one? Mistake as to the?
thing you're handing over.
Yep. So does that apply? Nope. No mistake as to, he doesn't think that he's handing over a chocolate fish and he's handing over money instead, right? Is there a mistake as to the amount that he's handing over? There is, okay? He thinks that he's handing over, it's not about the value, it's about the number of pieces of paper, all right? Because we're not concerned with value. So does that vitiate consent? Why not? Yes?
There's an exception for money.
Yeah. Okay, so Illich makes it clear there's an exception for money in cases of a bona fide transaction for good value. All right, so good faith for good value. Are we talking about the $10 note here or the $5 note or both? Like, oh, I didn't think about that. Is he mistaken as to the $10 note? Did he have any mistake in terms of his deliberate handing over of the $10? What was his mistake in relation to that? Yeah, so his mistake was to how much he thought he'd received and therefore the change that he had to give her back. Does that fall into the exceptions we're talking about? Leaving aside the exception for money. So we're talking about those, is there a mistake made by him as to the amount that he's giving her? Or is it a mistake as to how well he can do maths and how well he can identify how much money he's given? If he hadn't given her the $5, the extra $5, would he have made a mistake as to the number of pieces of paper he'd given her?
No, because he thought he was giving him $5 note, and that was 2 pieces of paper.
Yep.
But in regards to the $10 note, it was missed.
Yeah, there's no mistake as to the number that he's giving her. He deliberately and consented to give her that amount, his mistake as to how much he received from her and therefore his calculation, right? So actually we're on, in terms of looking at whether or not we fall into the exceptions, the mistakes under Illich that might vitiate consent, we're really only talking about the $5. The $10 doesn't even fall into those three exceptions. So then really we're deciding, well, have we got a bona fide transaction here? Have we got anything on the facts to suggest that she hasn't acted in good faith? No. So what if she went, oh, look at that, he's given me too much money while she's standing there. Dumbass, I'm going to put it in my pocket and out I go. Would that be bona fide? Okay, so that, if we've got that on the facts, then that might vitiate his consent to hand it over. But we don't have enough on there, right? Because it's given with consent, what does that mean about money? It's a fungible, so ownership passes. Money becomes hers. So does she then owe him $15? She does, right? She hasn't committed theft, but in a civil situation, he's given her too much money, and in fact, he could then sue her for $15. Obviously, he's not going to, but right? It doesn't mean that the money isn't owed. Okay? And this is where we come back to that whole origins of the law. All right. Next situation. We've got Hannah going into a bar and she gets really drunk, comes home, finds she's wearing a gold watch, can't remember how she got it, decides she likes it and she wants to keep it. Security footage at one of the nightclubs that she visited shows she took it off a person who was passed out in the corner of the club. Hannah's quite the gem, isn't she? Let's assume that Hannah, just for the sake of getting through this more quickly, let's assume that Hannah is so drunk that she can't form the mens rea of intention to take. Okay, so we can't prove that she actually formed the mens rea to actually take the watch. So can we charge her with theft and successfully charge her with theft? Want to try again? Yep, what are we going to rely upon? Using or dealing. Okay, so we've got to start, have we got property? What's our property? The watch. Is it owned or possessed by someone else? Yes, it was. Has she used or dealt with it? Okay. Has she done that without consent? Yeah. Does she have an intention to use or deal with it? Well, she's got an intention, so using or dealing with it in a way that is contrary to the rights of the original owner. Yeah. Okay. Has she done it dishonestly? Does she believe she's got authorization or consent from the person who was the owner? No. Does she believe she's got consent or authority to retain it? Okay, so she's done absolutely nothing to ascertain that, so no. Can she show that she acted with a genuine belief that she had a proprietary or possessory right? No. Can you show that she's got an intention to permanently deprive? Okay. So this is where you're in that Zubritsky case. Right, so she's using or dealing is about, even though you might have come into possession of the property in a way that is not an issue, if you use or deal with it in a way that is contrary to the rights of the original owner, such that it either can't be returned to the owner because of the way in which you use or deal with it, like in Zubritsky with the pram, or that you intend to actually retain it altogether, then you're guilty of using or dealing. It's a very different way of establishing liability. going to skip 4. Let's go to the exercise 5. We've got Milton. He drops off his car. He knows it's going to cost $5,000. And he knows when he drops it off that he doesn't have that amount. But he really needs his car for his repair business, and he hopes he can find the money somehow. When he goes to pick it up, he takes advantage of the garage mechanic being distracted, grabs the keys, and drives off without paying for the repairs. Can we charge him with theft successfully and convict him? What do you think? What's your property? Yep. Okay, so what's your property though? Identify your property. Your property is, are you saying the property is the possessory right? Or is the property the car? Okay, the property is the car. Is it owned or possessed by someone else? So is that what you're relying upon in terms of the right that the garage has? Yeah, so they possess the car. They've got a lien, what we call a lien over the car. A security, so that's an N, sorry. A security to hold on to the car until payment. Right, so they have, you've got an interest in the vehicle which is protected, okay? Has he taken the property? Right. Has he done it without consent? Yep. Can you show that he's got an intention? Yes. Has he done it dishonestly? Has he done it without? Okay, what facts are you going to rely upon to show that? Yeah, okay, so that shows that he knows he hasn't got, is that what you were going to, yeah. It shows he hasn't got, he knows he hasn't got authorisation or consent. What about claim of right? It's not quite so obvious, is it? Yep.
Seems that he knows he doesn't have possessory right to the property because it's using it to know they're repairing his.
What if he says, but it's my car? You can't stop me going and getting it. Yeah, I mean, it's not clear on your facts as to what his state of mind is, but I would have said that he was going to be hard pushed, given he knows he's supposed to pay for it before he picks it up. I think he'd be hard pushed to be able to show that he thought he had claim of right, okay, to be able to show he knew he had, right to, he's got a proprietary right and possessor, I'm struggling with this word today, right to possession. But whether or not he is acting with with a belief that he has the right to take the car, and that belief is unclear. I would have said probably he's going to have problems establishing he's got claim of right. Has he got an intention to permanently deprive them of their interest, okay, which is the possession of the car as security? Okay. Excellent. You've done really, really well. Not very exciting, I know, but you've managed to work your way through the elements really well, and you're starting to really grapple with the idea of how, just make sure you apply the facts to the law and leave all the other judgment to one side. Okay, next week when we do the other offences, you'll start to see the gaps that are left by theft are plugged by some of these other offences. Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday.